Hi, welcome to First in Fiction, your first stop for learning to write fantastic fiction. I am Molly Jo Reilly. I am the producer and moderator for tonight's podcast, and with us we have our first co-host, Aaron Gansky.
Hello, I'm Aaron Gansky. That feels very redundant now since you already said that, and I write books.
And hence the writing book parts is also redundant, as I introduced you as an author. At least I thought I did.
True.
And with us tonight, we also have author and co-host Tessa Emily Hall.
Hi, I'm Tessa Emily Hall, and I am a YA author of fiction for teens and nonfiction for teens, and I work in publishing as well.
Fantastic. So a couple of reminders, housekeeping, if you will. Follow us on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up. Share this with your peeps on all your social media sites. This is also, if you can leave us a review, the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. That's the equivalent of leaving a great book review on Amazon and Goodreads. And we're always after some good karma, so send it our way.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of good book reviews, if you don't want to hit the thumbs up on YouTube, just go ahead and leave us good book reviews on our numerous novels and books, because we could use that. So especially if any of you had novels release recently.
Wait a minute, Aaron. Aaron, this looks familiar.
Yes.
You had a book release last month. How did it go?
I think by the time this airs, it might be more than a month ago. But yes, the book release of The Seven Seals, the third installment of my Hand of Adonai series, including a digital-only, at least for now, digital-only novella called The Shadow Assassin, which is really kind of cool. I don't want to take too much, I don't want this to be a commercial or whatever, but if you've been following the series, you'll definitely want to pick those up because they're real good. Some of my best writing, I think. Of course, I say that about everything. That gets awkward. So
now, to clarify, the novella, is that in with the storyline? Do they read that before they read book 3 or after book 3?
It is kind of the Rogue One of my series. It is the episode 2.5 of my series. I know Rogue One was 3.5, but whatever. It kind of, you can read it in either order, but if you read book 3 before you read the novella, you'll get a little bit of the summary of what happened in the novella. But if you really want to kind of do things, I think the best way would be read the novella first. It's real cheap. It's like a couple of bucks, digital. You can download it on your Kindle. I already have people clamoring for print versions of it, so I'm talking to my publisher about that. We'll see.
Wonderful. Congratulations on that, Aaron.
Thank you. But
Tessa, oh, go ahead. Sorry, Aaron.
I was just going to say, in that book, what I used a lot of was deep point of view.
Yes.
Oh, that's a good segue. Yeah. What, Aaron, is deep point of view?
Well, I think I'm going to let Tessa handle that because Tessa, heard you talk about this. I was up at Blue Ridge last year, and it was kind of cool because I was not there as a presenter, but simply as an attendee. And it was really nice to be able to actually go to other people's classes. And I prioritized going to yours. And one of the ones that you had was writing in deep point of view. And so I definitely bookmarked that as one of the ones I wanted to attend. And I did. So I'm going to kind of defer to you here as the expert of deep point of view.
Yeah, so I absolutely love this style of writing. It's a narrative style of writing that just allows authors to establish a connection between the reader and the characters. And it's especially popular in young adult fiction. And I think it's because teenagers, they love having this certain strong connection with the character. They like to almost feel as if they're in the book and they're in the shoes of the main character, of the point of view character. And so this deep POV is it's just a narrative style that allows the story to develop through that deep perspective of the point of view character. And most of the time it's written in first person, although it can be accomplished in third person as well. I found it's a lot easier to do this through writing first person myself. That's what I prefer. But yeah, It's just establishes a sense of realism, and it allows the reader to almost have the fictive dream kind of experience, which is basically as you're reading a book, as you're reading a story, all of your surroundings just disappear, and you feel almost as if you are in the book and you are the character. And I love that kind of experience. And as authors, that should be what we hope to accomplish in our books, to give our readers this fictive dream kind of experience. And so really deep POV is just another way to show instead of tell, which is why I love it.
Yeah, and that's I loved the way that you present this. I've never necessarily called it deep point of view, but I understand. Is that kind of a term that you came up with, or is that a term that you've borrowed from someone?
It's not something I came up with. It's just the way of writing, because if you write in shallow point of view, then you create sort of a distance between the reader and the character. But yeah, deep POV is easy to understand just based on its name. You establish that deep connection with the character. And yeah, I don't know who exactly coined the term, but yeah, it wasn't me.
I have seen it online, deep POV, and Tessa, you did a great explanation of it. It's more than giving a lot of details, right? It's basically inviting the reader into the internal life of your character, not going through the motions of everyday life. Oh, I picked up a coffee cup. It's their entire process of, I'm so tired, and gosh, that coffee looks good, and the thoughts as well as the actions, right? But in a way where it doesn't read like telling of a thought or telling of an action.
Right, yeah. So with DPOV, you don't need those helping words such as she thought or she wondered or I thought and I wondered, because in this DPOV, you already are in their mindset. So it's easy to pick up on the fact that they're thinking something. And also it's important to note that you don't want to show every single detail. Only the things that are the most important, and only like the thoughts and the action that is important for furthering the story along. So even though this does require a lot more words, just like showing always requires more words than telling, you don't want to overdo it in a way that you're just showing everything about this character's life, their daily life. You just want to do it in a way, you just want to show the scenes that is important for the developing of the story, and do it in a way that can establish that sort of connection with the reader and the character, because those are the kind of stories that are going to stick with them. The stories that, their surroundings just disappear and they feel as if they're right there in the story world that you've developed. And those are the kind of stories that really connect with them and make the characters leap off the page, make them seem realistic. And also you can do this in a way that allows the setting to come to life as well through incorporating the five senses.
I like kind of what you said at the beginning about this being a way for the reader to experience the story. And for me, that's, one of my soapboxes. I've got a lot of soapboxes. You think I would be very, very clean with all these soapboxes.
Well, you're definitely the soapbox king.
None of them actually have soap. Last time it was bonsai trees. Apparently it's going to be soapboxes. However, the idea of experiencing a story, and it's kind of weird to hear a novelist or a writer say that nobody wants to read a story, but I don't think they do. Nobody likes reading stories. They like experiencing a story. They don't want to read about people falling in love. They want to fall in love. And the way that we can do that is by, as you say, giving kind of an abundance of information, not irrelevant information, but relevant information. And when I say relevant information, I want to make a distinction. It's relevant not necessarily to the writer, it's relevant to the character. And this is kind of, for me, what deep POV is. It is the if we think of kind of some old school literature where the narrator almost becomes a type of character by himself or herself, where the narrator is telling the events, that creates kind of what I'll call a narrative distance, or as you might say, kind of a shallow POV, where we are watching the events unfold rather than kind of, as Molly said, embodying the characters. When we remove that narrative distance by writing a deep point of view, by, as you said, including that interior monologue, including relevant details, details that are relevant to the character, when we explain the setting through the experiences of the main character, it creates less narrative distance, and it allows for the reader to kind of slip into the perspective of that character and really increase the amount of empathy that they feel for that character. And I think that's what's really kind of important about it.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that's another thing that I love about writing in POV is it allows readers to experience what it is like to be these other characters. Rather than what you were just saying, rather than simply just reading the experience of this character, reading about it, that's more telling of the story and telling the character's journey. Instead, the reader is they're joining the journey along with the character. They're taking the journey as well. And they understand, even if they can't exactly relate with the main character, even if they wouldn't make those decisions if they were in their shoes, they still can understand why they made those decisions, because the author has been able to write it in such a way that the character's motivations and the character's worldview is all filtered throughout the story. And so the reader, even if they don't understand why they're making this stupid mistake, they can, even if they can't relate with it, they can understand simply because they are so close in that deep POV that they understand that this is their mindset, this is their worldview. And I think that that does help us as readers to be able to establish empathy, to understand what it's like to be other people who might be different from us. And really, that's what happened with my first book, Purple Moon. My main character, I would receive reviews from teenagers who told me that even though they couldn't relate with the main character, they still understood why she made decisions that she's made, and they still felt that kind of connection with her. And so that's what I love. That's what the kind of responses that I love to hear from readers is when people tell me that they felt as if the characters were real and that, the setting came to life and that sort of thing. And I think that's an advantage that we have as authors as opposed to filmmakers, is that we get to allow the world to come to life and in the reader's imagination, allow them to step into the pages pretty much. And I love that. So it's a lot of fun.
I agree.
Can you guys give us a couple of examples or one example? I know we've been talking about it in detail, but like for the new writers who don't quite understand all the details, I'm thinking like a standard POV first person would be, I reached for the cup of coffee, it was hot. Whereas deep POV would just say, the coffee was really warm. So I take like the telling of how I reached for it or something like that. Is that correct, or is there more to it than that?
Yeah, so what I would suggest is try to avoid telling words such as saw, such as noticed, such as wondered, or even smelled and that sort of thing. So I actually have an example. This is one that I use in my deep POV classes. And this sentence would not be in deep POV. Anna saw the bouquet of roses on the dining room table and smelled their sweet scent. Who brought these, she wondered. So the narrator there is telling us that the main character saw these roses and that she smelled the scent and that she wondered. But instead, if we write in deep POV, then we place ourselves in the character's shoes, and we can then rewrite it to say this. Anna stepped into the kitchen, overtaken by a floral aroma. Where did that come from? The scent grew stronger as she peered into the dining room. A smile slid onto her lips. There it was, a bouquet of roses tucked into a glass vase at the center of the table. Where could that have come from? So you don't need the she wondered. And even with dialogue too, you don't even need a lot of dialogue tags because you can include action beats and that sort of thing instead. And so you're just, by avoiding the traces of authorship such as that, the reader almost forgets that they're reading a book. And one example that I like to give of a book that does this really well, I think, is The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. And of course, that's a young adult fiction book, and it was written in first point of view too.
Great.
Yeah, specifically the thing that I was picking up on there is the transition between interior monologue and action. And with deep POV, what you tend to find is that shift between the two is more natural, and occurs a little more frequently, and there's an appropriate balance to it, as opposed to keeping the interior monologue out. If there's no interior monologue, that's where we're at that shallow point of view and we've got that narrative distance. But being able to slip into that interior monologue and then back into action, again, with the details that the character is noticing, that to me is like kind of the hallmark of the deep point of view. One of the examples that I was thinking of, and this is again content warning, but the Game of Thrones series, in which you have an incestuous relationship, and there's a point where it explains that relationship from the point of view of the people who are involved in it, and you kind of get to the end and you go, okay, I don't agree with it, still gross, but I understand their motivation, I understand their thought process, I understand why it makes sense for them, and even though it can be kind of somewhat off-putting, if you can create that kind of empathy for a character that's that, off-putting, that's to me a quality writer, and that I think is accomplished through the use of the deep point of view there.
Right.
I have nothing. You guys are really quiet, and I have nothing to add to that. That was
I was about to say something, but I completely lost it.
Yeah.
I just need anybody to say something after this whole incestuous relationship example.
Something that you said made me think. So whenever you're doing this, you are filtering everything in the inner monologue, in the inner dialogue, and that allows the voice of the main character to be developed. And so you'll notice if you read books that aren't written in deep POV and books that are written in third person too, the voice isn't, the voice, you can't really hear the voice of the character that well, but in young adult fiction books, the voice is very well captured. And I think this is part of the reason, because we are in that mindset. And of course, as a young adult fiction author, I absolutely love being able to establish that authentic voice that rings true to that character, and allowing them to sort of just establish this kind of relationship with the reader and allow their voice to come to life to the reader throughout as the story goes along. And one way that I like to do this this is another trick to showing instead of telling, is pretend as if you are writing in your point of view character's journal, and as the scene goes along. So instead of writing in the journal after their day has already happened and they're just recalling the events, instead you're writing in their journal as they face each event, and you're recording what happens, the action. You're breaking down the action step by step, and you're also recording their responses, their internal responses, as well as the action. And so again, this is a step-by-step kind of replay or recap, rather than simply writing in her journal at night after the events have already happened. So that's just a way that I personally like to get into the character's mindset to allow this deep POV to be established. And also it helps with show instead of tell. And another thing is, if you want to accomplish deep POV, I would just suggest, again, try to study show versus tell. Study how you can just write in a way that brings the reader into the scene and allows the story world to happen to them by writing active description rather than passive description. And it's a lot of fun. It can be a lot of work, and sometimes it requires more words than telling. But the payoff is really great whenever you can see how the readers have established a connection with your characters.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to encourage any authors that are like halfway through their manuscript and saying, oh, darn, I wished I'd have known this and had started. It's really easy to go back in reviewing your manuscript if you've got it on any kind of Microsoft Word program, to do a search and edit. Look for the words thought, wondered, felt, feel, all of that. And then you can say, where it says, I thought this or that, instead of making it a sentence of, I thought the coffee was cold, you can change that so it just says, is this coffee too cold, or this coffee is cold? You can take the wonder, like Tess was saying, take the wonder part, the personalization out of it, because in making it a statement, we know that the narrator, the character, is stating it, and it does draw you in deeper. So if for authors who are already working through their books, and this isn't something that you have to start at the beginning with, you can go back through and do some easy edits for it, and just think, how do you want to present this? This won't be a problem.
And I do have one more example if we have time. For show versus tell that I use in my show versus tell workshops. So this first sentence, you'll notice that it tells the story from a distance, and it's written in shallow POV. It says, it was hot and the sunlight was bright, but as Gabrielle made her way across the lawn, she thought it was the perfect day to sunbathe. So obviously we're telling the reader that it was hot and the sunlight was bright, and then Gabrielle made her way across the lawn and she thought this. But instead we can write in deep POV and show it in a way that says, Gabrielle slid on her sunglasses to shield her eyes from the blinding sun rays. The temperature had risen to 90 degrees today, and the warmth of the sun kissed her skin as she made her way across the lawn. Today was the perfect day to sunbathe. So again, we just remove the she thought, and we're able to show that it was hot and to show that it was bright without actually having to come out and say that.
Mm-hmm. That's a great example.
Yep. And it's something that I know we're short on time here, but it's something that it's a skill that you develop. It's like anything else. The more you do it, the first time you do it, it's going to be hard, and it's going to take a long time, and it's going to be frustrating. It's fine. Just get through it, and then do it again and again and again. And eventually you become more adept with it, more gifted, and it starts to become natural. So don't expect to be able to kind of do this right away. Give yourself the liberty, especially if you're a new author, to develop those skills. If you're a practiced author, this is, something that you may want to go back and double check and make sure, am I really using this deep POV in all the places that I need to? But we've got some other things, some other episodes coming up that I think will also kind of help with on how to embody your character and how to really kind of imagine yourself in the situation of your character, so you can get into that deep POV. But that is stuff that we are going to have to look at next time, because we are out of time for this week. So we do thank you all for listening. Don't forget to check us out at ErinGansky.com, TessaEmilyHall.com, and franklyMyDearMojo.com. Is that still right?
Yes.
Okay.
Also MollyJoeReally.com. So you can find me at either place.
Okay. So we do thank you all for listening, and until next time, good writing.